Hello everyone, I welcome you all for this Python for Beginners course. This is Arokia, Senior Automation Developer from Session1 Computing Private Limited, Chennai. I am working as an automation developer for 7+ years, and I have given my Twitter handle _Northern. You can follow me here. I usually tweet about Python and information security. Okay, let's begin our course. First, we need to know what is Python. Recently, you could have heard Python in the tech industry very frequently in AI and machine learning especially. Now let's see what is Python. Python is basically a high-level scripting language, and it's interpreted based language. It's not going to be compiled and run as a standalone. It's interpreter based language, and it has interactive prompt as well to execute the Python statements line by line and see the output right away. It supports object-oriented programming. We'll see what is that in the later tutorial. And since Python is pretty much easy for the beginners, it's called as a beginner's language as well. Now let's see history of Python. Who created Python? In 1991, Guido van Rossum is a Dutch developer. He created Python, and he named this as Python because he loves a television show called Monty Python's Flying Circus. That's why he named Python for his newly created programming language. Okay, now let's see. Before beginning any new learning, we should know why should we learn that language first. Here I have given a few factors about Python. First one, it's easy to learn. It's like reading an English book. If you understand English, you can easily learn Python as well. Since it's easy to read, you can maintain the program also easily if you follow certain standards. It has a huge set of standard libraries and custom developed libraries as well in market. So it's free to use. You can imagine anything. There is a high probability that there could be a library for that thing. And it supports interactive mode as well. We'll see what is interact mode after the installation. Since it's portable, you can use across multiple operating systems. You can code in Windows, but you can execute the same code in Linux and Mac as well. It supports databases as well. It has an interface and modules, so you can interact with the database. And it supports GUI programming. So you can develop your desktop applications using Python, and once you develop a desktop application using Python, you can execute the same across multiple operating systems as well. It has a library called PyQt, which supports cross-platform development, and it's reasonably faster. And I would say it's not as faster as C or C++, because those are compiled language. And since it's interpreter based language, but not so faster than other languages. Now let's see how to set up Python in Windows, and in Linux by default it comes with that, so we don't need to worry about it. Here we are going to focus about Windows operating system. So let's see how to install Python in Windows operating system. I have my machine here. You need to visit python.org website. It's the official website of Python. I'm going to type that here, python.org. From here, you can download the binary of Python. Click downloads, and basically Python have the latest version 3.8, and it has a older version 2.7, and people will say 2.x as well. But in industry, a lot of scripts could have been developed using 2.7. and you may need to maintain that script or migrate those scripts to the latest version as well. So if you want to explore both the versions, you can download 2.7 from older releases as well. And if you are going to start Python as a beginner, I would suggest you to download the latest version, which is Python 3.8.2 as of now. You can click download. It will be asking whether you want to run this program or save. I am giving save. Now we should be able to install this exe in our machine. Just right click and run as administrator. It will ask you a user access control. Just give yes. Now we are in the installation process. Yes. Now don't forget to click add Python 3.8 to path. Adding any binary to path will help us to open that program from anywhere in our machine. So just check this option, add Python 3.8 to path, and proceed to with customize installation, and just keep these options as it is, and make sure it's selected for all user if you want your installation to be visible to other users in your system. And next, here in advanced options section, I'm selecting install for all users. You can see the difference. Otherwise, if you are going to install only for you, it will be installed in app data, local programs, Python, and Python 3.8.3.2. And this 3.2 is meaning like it's a 32-bit version of Python. You can click install for all users, so it will be installed under 32-bit program files location. Okay, now you can click install because all the remaining options are okay with us, because add Python to environment variables, this should be selected, and click install. It will take a little bit time to get it done. It's installing for us now. After this, you need to verify whether the install went successfully or not. I'll tell you how to verify that post this installation. Okay, now Python got installed, and there is one more option which is very convenient for us. It says disable path length limit. Changes your machine configuration to allow programs including Python to bypass the 260 character max path limitation. So now we need to understand this. Basically, Windows has a path limit, which is your entire file path length. Windows is limiting to 260 character. If we want to disable this limit, we can do right away from Python installer. You just click this and close, because sometimes you may need to encounter a path which may exceed 260 characters in real-time scenarios. So in that case, you may need to disable the limit. Now we need to check whether Python has been installed correctly or not. For that, you go to the search button and type run. You will get this application. Click run and type cmd, which is a command prompt in Windows. Now go here and type Python, and you should be able to see the version which you have installed here, Python 3.8.2, and this triple greater than is a Python prompt. If you are getting this prompt, you have installed the Python successfully. This is how you verify Python installation. Okay, now we have installed our Python and we are ready to code. Before that, we need to edit our code somewhere. That's where IDE comes to a picture. IDE is like integrated development environment. Here I have suggested two IDEs. One is Visual Studio Code and another one is PyCharm Community Edition. Based on your machine configuration, you can select either one of these. Visual Studio is basically a lightweight IDE. PyCharm is little bit heavy. If you have good machine configuration with above 4 GB RAM and all, then you can go for PyCharm Community Edition. And if you have a less configuration machine, you can select Visual Studio Code. To install Visual Studio Code, go to this web address code.visualstudio.com, and I'll show you where to pick that. code.visualstudio.com, and click download for Windows a stable build and click next. your IDE will be installed and it will be ready for coding. Now I'm going to show you how to open Visual Studio here. Let me close this and show you from start. Type VS Code, you will get Visual Studio Code. Click this, you will get the window. From here you can go to File, Open Folder, select your folder, select. Now you'll be having a folder structure. On the left is the Explorer, right side you have your editor. Now we have our IDE setup ready, and we need to set up our newly installed Python version also in our IDE. To do that, just create one simple script, temp.py. You can click this icon to create a new file and name this as a temp.py. Just enter. Now you can see here Python extension is loading and all. So here you can see on bottom left Python 3.8.2. If it is not showing for you, you just click here. There will be a suggestion for installed interpreters in your machine. You can select the latest version, Python 3.8.2, and that's it. Now we can start coding. Before coding, let's learn a bit about the syntax. Now we have two programs in front of us. On the left I have import OS and if name equal to main, print hello world and directory. Don't worry about what is this OS and what is this double underscore name, double underscore main and all. Just try to understand visually. Here we have the syntax correct, here the syntax is incorrect. Now Python mostly depends on the indentation. Indentation meaning the number of spaces left from the beginning of the line. Here you can see it's almost 4 spaces. Here also 4 spaces. The only difference between these two code is this line. This line has only 2 spaces left from the beginning. That's where the problem comes. Python heavily depends on indentation. When you logically group a number of statements into a block which has to be executed only if the condition is true or for any other condition as well, you need to keep the same number of spaces for all the lines for that particular block. That's why here I have given 2 print lines which is supposed to be executed only if this condition met. So I have maintained the same number of spaces for both the lines. But here my intention was to print the both statements if this condition is true. But I have maintained the unequal number of lines between these two. Here I have 4 number of spaces. Here I have 2 number of spaces. That's where the problem is. It says clearly undent does not match any outer indentation level, because for these 2 statements outer indentation is the start of line. So just keep this in mind. While we start coding, you will understand this much better way. Now, as I said earlier, we have Python prompt. The Python prompt starts with 3 greater than symbol. Let me type cmd and enter. This will open my command prompt, and as we verified Python is working, let's type Python. We are getting this triple greater than, sorry. So this is called Python prompt. Here this is in interactive mode, interpreter mode. You can type anything. As of now I use only print function to show you how it works. Hi, it executes immediately. When we execute through interactive prompt, the statements are getting executed immediately. It says print hi, it evaluates, the interpreter evaluates the line and execute it immediately. And in the case of script mode, we need to store our script in a file. And after that, we need to run that script with our Python executable. And now let's see how to do that. Here I have created one temp.py. The same statement I am entering here. Print hi. Now let me try to execute this from command prompt. Let me come out from this prompt. Let me go to F:, and let me go to my folder location, and here I have code. Clear the screen. Don't worry about these commands, but eventually you need to learn this. Now I have my temp.py in my current folder. I need to execute this file. To execute any Python file, you mention Python and space your file name. Run this, you will get the line hi. So this is how we execute from command prompt. But during our development, we will not be executing in command prompt. We will be executing inside our IDE itself. Here we have two options. Since we have already selected the proper interpreter here, you can directly click this play button. It will open a console here and run your script just below it. Otherwise, there is one more option. Right click and run Python file in terminal. Like this also, you can run your script. Yes. The easy shortcut you need to remember for Visual Studio Code is this area is Control 1. If you press, my cursor is here. If you press Control 1, you will come to your editor area. At the same time, if you want to go to your terminal, press Control tilde symbol. You'll go here. Tilde symbol is this one. Just above tab key and below escape key. Yes, these are the ways you can run your Python script in Visual Studio Code. Now let's continue. Now we'll go further in Python syntax. Now we are going to learn what is identifier. Identifier is nothing but a name which we use to identify a variable. Now, what is variable? Variable is nothing but a container which holds some data. A data can be an integer or number, a text or string, or anything. And Python have its own data types as well, which we will be learning in the subsequent lessons. And as of now, you imagine variable is a container which holds some data. Now, we said variable is a container. Now, we need to see how to name that variable. We have some rules and restrictions to provide a variable name. These are the rules. Now, our first rule is we can have small alphabet A to Z and capital alphabet A to Z and number 0 to 9 and underscore. These are the characters allowed. But you should not start your variable name with number. And variable names are case sensitive. Capital name and small name. These two are different. Now we'll see these rules in the editor, and special characters are not allowed in the names. And Python has its own set of keywords which are not that much huge as per other languages. Here we have minimal set of keywords in Python. These keywords you should not use as your variable name. Now, before going to this, let's see the variable names rules in action. Yes, here I have removed that line and I am going to store my marks into one variable. I am naming mark1 equal to 90. Yes, this is a valid variable name. I am just simply trying to print this variable. So print is a function which accepts input which will be printed in the terminal eventually. Now let's run this. It printed 90. Okay, so it accepted this name as a valid name. Now let's try to start with 1 and mark. Here itself you can see it's showing us red. Just place your mouse over that error message. You can see invalid syntax. Now try to run this by ignoring that error. You will see invalid syntax error. Okay, so you should not start your variable with number, but can we start the name with underscore? We'll replace here itself. What is it saying? Underscore mark 1 is not defined. Okay, mark. So it accepted. So you can start with underscore, but you cannot start with number. So there is a basic rule, and here you can check the case as well. For capital M, I have stored 100. A variable name mark which starts with capital M, I have stored 100. The full lowercase character, I am storing 90. And after that, I am changing the caps named variable as 95. So first I am assigning 900, then I am changing 95. Now you test this by printing it out. Print mark. So here I have 3 statements. Now let me run this. So when you change this variable mark, it does not affect the lowercase mark. So these two are different since Python variable is case sensitive. Okay, now let's go to little bit more about syntax. No braces to indicate blocks of code for class and function definitions. If you are familiar with other programming languages, C or C++, you will be using curly braces to define a block of code for any logic. But here we don't have braces. Here braces has been denoted by line indentation, which we already saw in one simple program. And number of spaces in the indentation is variable. So the only constraint is if you follow the first line with 4 number of spaces or 5 number of spaces, you should maintain the same number of spaces for the entire code block. That's what the only constraint here. Okay. If you have multi-line statements, you can separate it out by backslash, and quotations we use for string, and comments in Python starts with hash. If you start any line with hash, Python interpreter will be simply ignoring that line. Using blank lines, we have some rules for maintaining how many number of blank lines we should use in our script. In the later slides we see about the standards. We follow that. Now this is standard conventions for Python development. We'll call that as PP8 standard. You can visit that page to know more about it. I have given you major standard limitations or major standards to be followed in Python. I have given here. Use 4 spaces per indentation level. Though Python, it won't give you any error if you maintain correct number of spaces. There is no need to be 4, but the standard suggests 4. Spaces are preferred indentation method. To give the space, you can have spaces or tabs as well, but spaces are preferred. The single line length is limited to 79 characters. This is up to us. If you are comfortable, we can increase, but the suggested size is 79. And these lines I'll explain you when we deal with object-oriented programming, because this involves mostly functions, classes, definitions and all. So this I'll be explaining while we're discussing object-oriented programming. Now furthermore, since we have imports, import statement is basically used in Python to bring other modules to our current script. A literal meaning, import something to my current space. Correct. Now there are different set of libraries, standard libraries and third-party libraries, and libraries which we developed our own for our purpose. So this is the order should be maintained to import that library statement. But ignoring this order, it won't lead you to any error, but this is a standard. First import Python's standard libraries, then third-party install libraries, then your own custom developed libraries. Yes, and for modules, they have a limitation in naming. Should be all lowercase names. Underscores can be used in the module name if it improves readability. This absolutely depends on the readability. Python is famous for its readability, so we should maintain that in our scripts as well. So class names should normally use cap words convention. So all the words will be starting with capital character. Function names will be lowercase characters, and if you want to separate words, you can separate the words by underscore. Usually people call that a snake case convention. Could have heard camel case convention, and if you separate the words by underscore, it's a snake case convention. Yes. Here I am going to cover in short where Python is used in industry. And general web development, we have Django and Flask libraries. And scientific computing and data science, we have a couple of libraries. And machine learning, there are extensive libraries for machine learning, especially scikit-learn and TensorFlow, Google's TensorFlow machine learning library. And startups are using Python mainly because it's scalable and we can develop very much faster than other programming languages. And we have huge set of libraries for financial industries as well. Okay, here I have best practices to follow. First one, proper comments. When you write a Python script, you're not the only one who is going to maintain it, because after some time you may leave the company. The other person who replaces you should understand what you have written in that script. Proper logging activities. Since your script may be running 24/7, you cannot reproduce some scenarios. In that case, Python logging will be very helpful to trace back what went wrong. And consistent naming convention across script. This will help you in future as well, because today you may code one script, but after 6 months you yourself will not have any idea to modify that script quickly. In that case, consistent naming convention will help you much more in understanding the script flow easily. And readability is more important because it helps you and other people as well. One primary thing, simple is better than complex. You don't need to write a huge set of lines of script to show yourself as an expert. If you are good enough in a program, your program should be simple and it should be modularized. All these things we will learn and follow in this lesson, and let's continue. We discussed about the best practices and the syntax of Python. Now we'll see a few examples. The first one, variable number of spaces. As I have explained already, we need to maintain the same number of spaces for a code block. In this sample we are going to see, first let me declare one mark. It's 90. Now let's say we are going to check this mark for pass status. If the mark is about 40, we'll say the student is pass. Otherwise we'll say the student is fail. For that, I am just simply checking if mark greater than 40 and colon. Just ignore this why is colon and all in the syntax. I'll be explaining you in detail. Just to understand the number of spaces, just assume this line checks whether the mark is greater than 40 or not. If it is greater than 40, it will say true. It will return true. If the condition is true, this code block will be executed. And now here I am printing student passed in the exam. Now I have one more line to be printed here, just few dash. Here I have one more statement, else. If the mark is less than 40, the condition will come here. Now we need to execute our else block. Here, student failed in the exam. The same way I am printing dash. This dash I am printing just to show you how I maintain this number of spaces here. Yes, now let's run this program. Okay, student passed in the exam. Now I am giving 30. Student failed in the exam. Now it's executing properly. Now you can see the difference. Here I have 1, 2, 3. Only 3 spaces I have given here. But for both the lines I have given 3 spaces. But for else block I have given 4 space for the first line. So the additional lines for the same code block should have 4 spaces only. So 4 spaces is not mandatory, but if you are going to provide some number of spaces for one code block, the first line, the same number of spaces should be maintained for the entire code block. That's what the learning point here. Okay, the next one, multi-line statements. What is multi-line statements? Let's say you have some condition which is going very long, maybe like 150 character length of such statements. In that case, for the understanding and readability, we need to break that line logically. Let's say here I'll define 2 variables. One is a equal to 10 and b is equal to 20. Just to check, I'm going to add one conditional statement, a equal to 10, and this is a logical operator. Just I'll be explaining all these operators later. Okay, now here I have given 2 conditions and I am printing success, and else I am printing failure. Okay, don't worry about the logical reason behind this success and failure and all. Just to explain you the multi-line statements, I have put these 2 conditions. Okay, here if there is a requirement for such conditions, it may exceed like the fixed number of length for a line which you have decided. It may exceed 79, which is our PEP standard, and you could have fixed, okay, I'm going to maintain 100 characters, but in some cases it may exceed that 100 characters length for a statement. In that case, you need to fold the statement into next line. For that, you need to use backslash and proceed from the new line logically. Okay, like this also you can run. You can see there is success printed. So this backslash should be used when you fold a statement into multiple line. Okay, now quotations. Let's say to represent a string we use double quote. Okay, this is today quote. Okay, now I have only a simple text to be printed, so I have used double quote. the same line and copy paste here with single quote. So let's see what it gives us. Same output, both the print statements are giving us. Okay, now I need to print one apostrophe here, today's. In this case, you should, if you are going to use a single quote inside a string, you should wrap it with a double quote. But if you are in a need of specifying double quote here, you should wrap it with single quote on the other side, outer side. This is how you handle quotation. You can see single quote and double quote also printed here. Okay, now comments. You have already seen how to mention comment in Python. So all these lines are comments. So you can see it's starting with hash. Python will be ignoring if the line starts with hash. So that's how you can mention comments in your code. You can mention multiple lines. This is another comment you can mention. You can describe what your program does. Another comment here. So like that, multiple lines you can mention. And if you have huge set of lines, you can't specify hash in front of each line. In that case, you can mention using triple quote. Triple quote. This is also a comment. Triple quote. Let's try to run. It won't be considered. This also will be considered as a comment. Okay. Now we have multiple statements in single line. There is one more option, like I have declared a equal to 10 and b equal to 20 in 2 lines. If I want to specify, or if I want to declare these 2 variables in single line, I can do like this. I can separate the lines by semicolon and I can declare print a comma b. I'm running this. Yes, I'm printing 10 and 20. Right click, run Python file in terminal, 10 and 20. So if only the statements you can specify in line, but for readability purpose this needs to be avoided and you can declare like this. So since this statement is better than this one in terms of readability, so we better avoid this kind of statements, but you need to know this is also a possibility to declare. Okay, so this is a basic syntax for Python, and from next video we'll start learning what is variable, and we have seen in short in this video, and we'll see in detail, and we'll see further data types in Python as well.